You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
Brian Kelly met with reporters on Monday to kick off Ole Miss week. And I think probably the first question that many of us want to know the answer to is the health of some key players. When Brian Kelly was asked last week about Caden Durham and Zy Alexander and C.J. Daniels, he wasn't very forthcoming. He said, I don't have to give an injury report during the open date, so I'm not going to. So he didn't. And when he was asked on Monday about the status of those players, he was very similarly pithy with his reply.
Are Caden, CJ, and Zy expected to practice this week?
Yes.
All three?
Yes.
That's all he's given you. Yes, they're expected to practice. To reiterate, C.J. Daniels, it was a knee injury. Brian Kelly was pretty forthcoming there, saying they kind of feared the worst. Daniels had an ACL in the past, but it was not that. It was as good a news as they possibly could have gotten. We talked about him last week. C.J. Daniels has really become a security blanket for Garrett Nussmeier. Actually, his Pro Football Focus grade for drops is the best among on the LSU team, meaning he catches his targets. His drop rate is the lowest. And he's got 20 receptions on the season, so he's averaging 4 catches a game. So you don't want to lose a veteran, experienced guy like that. It looks good there. Zy Alexander was in the concussion protocol. Fully expect to have him available this week, which is fantastic news, especially against that offense, that Ole Miss offense, where Jackson Dart and those receivers are going to challenge you in the passing game. And then there's Caden Durham, and that's the real concerning one because as we reported at LouisianaSports.net, Caden Durham suffered 2 dislocated toes. Now, against South Alabama, he returned to the game and played the rest of the half, but then missed the second half. You can go WebMD it about what it's like if you dislocate toes, and the prognosis ain't great. But that's probably just for Joes like you and me if you dislocate a toe. But whenever you have premium treatment and health care and you're trying to get ramped up to be competitive, I would venture a guess that they're going to have him ready to go for this one this weekend with Ole Miss coming in. But we'll continue to follow that as the week goes along. Brian Kelly was pretty clear there that they'll all practice this week, and that's something he has to disclose on the injury report now. So we'll continue to follow it. And it's just so important because the big development offensively for LSU from game 1 to now, obviously, is that they found a semblance of a running game. And when you think back to the Southern Cal game in the opener when they lost 27-20, it really wasn't until the third quarter when John Emery started to emerge in that third quarter that you felt like you found a running game. And then a week later, John Emery tears his ACL, and you'd kind of been searching for it. And we saw Caden Durham with his opportunity pop against Missouri and then was fantastic on the first 2 touches of the game against South Alabama. So if you have found balance in your offense, that only makes you more dynamic. I mean, you don't need to spell this out for you. It's just Garrett Nussmeier is right now one of the leading quarterbacks in the country in all of the major statistical categories. He's second right now in completions. He's third in touchdowns. He's one of the tops in completion percentage as well, passing yardage. So, yeah, you're talking about a guy that, forgive me. That was before the bye. So now, let me rephrase this. That was going into the bye. Obviously, he didn't play this weekend. So now he's 7th in passing yardage. But going into the bye, he was higher. So he's 7th in passing yardage. He is 5th in touchdowns, and he is looking for 5th in completions as well. So those numbers dropped, obviously, with him being idle this week, but obviously playing this week, it'll go back up. I don't think there's many LSU, looking at this through an LSU prism or an LSU lens, I don't think there's many of us who are concerned about LSU's ability to move the football against Ole Miss. I think that we all think, look, the offensive line is great. They've allowed 2 sacks through 5 games. Garrett Nussmeier and those receivers have been – I just went through the statistics for you. They've been great all year. LSU's going to move the ball offensively. They're going to move the ball. They're at home. They're going to score points. The bigger question is, what do you look like defensively? And for Lane Kiffin in that offense, which likes to go tempo, which has been balanced, and up until the Kentucky game was arguably the best offense in college football, how does the LSU defense match up against that offense specifically? Well, a big part of that is going to be what you do in the secondary. And Brian Kelly was asked about how they evaluated their personnel during the bye, because if you remember, he talked about after the South Alabama game, they had been rotating guys freely, and this was going to be the opportunity, that Tuesday of the open day when they started preparing for this game, that they weren't going to be rolling guys in and out anymore. They were going to have to decide who the ones are that they were going to count on. Here's what Brian Kelly said on Monday about how they went about evaluating their personnel during the bye.
The first thing you do is an exhaustive self-scout, right? What are your tendencies? What tendencies do you need to break? And are there things there that you're doing really well that you want to build on, or not so well that you need to certainly work on in the bye week? Then it's the evaluation of, the body of work through those first 5 weeks. Who are the guys that have built that trust that you can put on the field? So as you go into these 7 weeks of SEC opponents, those are the guys that you want on the field. So I think we've done both from a technical and tactical standpoint, the work necessary, and then from a personnel standpoint, who are the guys that we want to put on the field? That's been really a lot of the work this past week.
So who are the guys in particular at safety? That was the follow-up, how they're looking there on the back end at safety, where that's just frankly been the spot where they've had the most issues.
Well, I think we found them. I think it now becomes, for us more than anything else, is what do those rotations look like? And I think I said this last week. I don't think anybody's in a position that they're going to play 70 plays, right? So, what do those rotations look like? Is it a first, second down rotation? Is it a third down? Is it a nickel dime? Is it a pass rush situation? Is it a short yardage? So it's really kind of delineating out who's on the field in what situations. And I think we've got a better understanding of that, and it's much more clear, moving forward.
If I asked you which offense that LSU has played up to this point most resembles Ole Miss, I think you'd probably agree with me. And when I say Southern Cal, Miller Moss at quarterback, comparable to Jack Start, who started his career at Southern Cal, incidentally. 2 great play callers, Lincoln Riley, Lane Kiffin, calling the shots. Some elite level receiver talent, talented running backs as well. You got an SEC transfer at running back at Southern Cal and Woody Marks. So I think you'd agree. I think that you would agree that the offense LSU has played so far that most resembles Ole Miss would be Southern Cal. And that was a day where Southern Cal moved the football. They had success. Put up 447 yards, but 378 was through the air and just 69 on the ground. I think LSU is going to try to replicate that game plan, where you make them, and now Ole Miss can go fast, but where you make them have to methodically go down the field in these 8, 9, 10 play drives. And if they finish those drives, okay, but you hope you hold them to 3 instead of 7, and you hope it also shortens the game a little bit so you're not in a track meet like what happened a year ago. All that to say, LSU held that Lincoln Riley offense to 27 points. If you hold Ole Miss to 27 this weekend, I think you're going to be you have a great chance to win this football game, if you can do it. I mean, it was 10-10 at halftime. You went into the fourth quarter leading 17-13 in that game against Southern Cal, and they were sitting on 20 points until Woody Marks scored the game-winning touchdown with 8 seconds left. So all that to say, as daunting as it may seem because of some of the defensive issues, this defense, before you even had all the pieces before. I mean, you did not have Zy Alexander in that game. I mean, Sage Ryan was playing boundary corner. He's now back at safety. You had not yet seen Deshaun Spear start to play. You still had Harold Perkins, and you were trying him at off-ball linebacker at that point. You hadn't moved him to star. You still, of course, had Jacoby and Guillory, but Dominic McKinley was not available. We had not yet seen Ahmad Bro's emergence. So I think where you are now compared to where you were 5 weeks ago, you know your personnel much better. I think Blake Baker is in a much better position to be able to call and implement a defense. And I think structurally you're going to be facing an offense that's very similar to one you've already seen and had success against. Not in that dominant success, but where you had success. So I know as we look at it, it appears daunting. And LSU is a 3-point home dog this weekend against Ole Miss. But I think this may be one, as we're all looking at offense, especially with how that game a year ago played out in Oxford, the 55-49 ball game. I think both coaches are going to try to avoid that result again. Maybe try to control the line of scrimmage. You might be in for a lower scoring game in Tiger Stadium on Saturday. The total is 64.5. And as I look at it right now with ESPN Bet, it's actually Ole Miss 2.5. So that number's come down just a smidge. But you may see a game where these coaches are trying to aim for a game in the 20s instead of the 30s or 40s. Of course, we'll see how it goes as we get closer.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.